by the time I reached like my late 20s, I realized the fairy godmother wasn't coming. And the closest thing I could get to a fairy godmother was changing my actions. And I had a lot of career setbacks. I had a hard breakup. I had financial setbacks. But I realized like none of these things are life ending. They're all figure outable. The same way I got into some of this mess, I think I can figure out a way to get out.
I love that mindset.
Okay, if it means I need to take a higher paying job to pay off, this debt, then that's what I need to do. If it means that I need to like move in with a couple of roommates to save money, then that's what I need to do. And I just started focusing so much more on solutions than expecting other people to solve things for me.
So I am no longer a coffee drinker. Coffee is something I gave up in revamping my diet for my fertility health, which is very hard to do. But luckily, I found something amazing to replace it with, and that's my morning matcha that I use Kuli Moringa for. It gives me that same ritualistic feeling of having something warm in my hands in the morning without the caffeine, and I have loved having that as a replacement for my coffee. I love this product so much. It is delicious, and I honestly don't miss my coffee. So if you want an opportunity to check out Kuli Moringa, you can use our code QTC25 for 25% off your first purchase. Hey guys, welcome back to Quiet the Clock podcast. I am extremely excited to have our guest here, Les Alfred from Balanced Black Girl podcast. I've been messaging you through Instagram and like wanting to have you here. And so I'm really grateful. One, to just meet you in person. I love everything you're doing. I love your content. You totally exemplify the type of person we talk about on this podcast and what we hope women or, everybody kind of does, which is create their own timeline, create their own path, go off the blueprint. So I'm just so excited to have you here to talk about all those things. And I do want you to share your journey. But I do want to start with something you said on one of your solo episodes that I listened to that really resonated. And I think a lot of listeners would appreciate. So I hope I get this right. But you said something along the lines of, I'm exactly where I want to be, but nowhere where I want to be. But I'm allowing space for both.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God. I'm thrilled to have you here.
You have such a beautiful platform. So I'm excited to be a part of it. I had a realization maybe about less than a year ago, maybe like 8 to 10 months ago, where I realized the life that I have now was like the dream life of my 25-year-old self. However, and I'm grateful for that. However, as my 35-year-old self, the dream life that I envision for myself now is actually a little bit different. So I can have gratitude for like, yes, I am now living in what was once a dream, and acknowledge that I also would like things to maybe be a little bit different.
And I love the idea of, I think what people can struggle with, and I know this as a therapist, like is holding space for both things. I think sometimes we just focus on one and not the other. And I'm always encouraging people to be a little bit more expansive and allow both things to exist at the same time. So I'd be curious how you do that. Like, how do you hold space for both ideas and feelings?
I think remembering to enjoy the little things in those little moments. And I mean, there's so many parts of my day that are reminders of, oh, there was once a time when you really wanted this. Like, this morning, I took a workout class. There's a bar class that I really like to take, and it's at 9:30 a.m.
So hard. Bar is so hard.
I fight for my life every week. The class that I really love to take is at 9:30 a.m. And when I was in my early 20s, I worked in corporate. I had a very serious job. I had a really long commute. I had to be at my desk at 6:30 a.m. every day. It would have been a dream of mine to be able to have the space to take a workout class at 9:30 a.m. And so like this morning, when I was on my way to the gym to take that class, I reminded myself of that. Remember when you really wanted to be able to do this? And now this is like a normal day for you. This is like nothing. You don't even think twice about it because this is so, what you once wanted is now so normal. How cool is that?
That is so cool. I have those moments too when it's like a random Wednesday and I know from listening to your podcast, like the desire when you were in those 20s kind of corporate world was freedom and flexibility. And that was my same desire when I was working in finance, was like really the catalyst for me to start searching for what I wanted was this idea and concept that I got
aside from weekends, 10 days a year. Because at the time I got 2 weeks vacation and to choose what I wanted to do. And I was like, hell no, this is like not for me. So I love that you have that awareness and that gratitude for the days you get to have now.
Yeah.
I also love, and I love for you to speak to this, because I think this is really important, is you said in one of your podcasts too, is like having the realization to the change takes time.
Yeah, for sure. There were a lot of moments where I felt like I was really behind, particularly in my career. When I had started creating content, when I started building a platform, just feeling like other people are more successful than me, or this isn't happening fast enough, when really I just underestimated how long it took to actually build what I was trying to build. So I wasn't behind. It just took longer than I thought it should have taken.
Yeah. That's one of the narratives that come up so much. I mean, the kind of like quiet the clock is a lot around how we came up with the name is a lot of narratives I heard. My personal life narratives I held myself because I felt that a lot. I watched so many people do these like life milestone things, and I want to talk about all of that too before me. So feeling behind and running out of time was like, there's such strong narratives. And I'm curious for you, like when you held those narratives, how did you feel before realizing, no, I'm not behind. I'm just like, it takes a different time for me than somebody else, or my journey is not somebody else's?
I think it took me beginning to reach some of those milestones to begin to understand, because I think sometimes we romanticize things and we have an idea of how long something should take when really we've never done it. So it took me actually reaching some of those goals to realize like, oh yeah, it takes 10 years to do that thing that I was trying to do in 2. And thinking I could do it in 2 actually just doesn't make sense now that I've done it and now that I see that. Maybe I see some ways that I could have made fewer mistakes and optimized a little bit. But at the end of the day, the things that I wanted weren't immediate. They just took time.
Yeah. One thing I struggle with a lot, I've talked about it on here, is patience.
Same.
I am not a patient person, and it has not served me well. And that's like a skill I'm still like fine tuning, is to stay patient. And I'm curious for you, as someone that I guess also struggles with patience, like what helps you stay patient, or I guess also what helps you stay grounded or in the trust of your own timeline and process?
I often find that the more I resist patience, the more my patience is tested. And so learning to kind of embrace it. I have a loved one who also is like impatient, more so when it comes to like little things. Like, having to wait a little too long for something to be done or for a reservation or whatever. And that person is always the person who has some sort of issue or hiccup where things take longer, I think because they react so strongly.
Yeah.
And witnessing that has made me realize like the more I resist it, the more I'm going to keep getting these tests of my patience.
Totally. I mean, I really believe the universe does that on purpose. Yeah.
Exactly.
I definitely need those tests sometimes. I mean, I feel like the ways I've been tested, I wish I wasn't, but sometimes we need the like smack in the face.
Exactly.
So you mentioned this loved one that's kind of modeling this to you, that allows you to see, or help you maybe be more patient. And so I wanted to ask, kind of backing up a little bit, right? So talking about like timelines and blueprint, what was modeled to you growing up as the blueprint? Like, was it a linear blueprint? Like, what did you see around you? And I want you to, maybe we can start there and you can share your journey that's been very non-linear.
Yeah.
But what did you see around you growing up? Like, because I feel like we have all these narratives and timelines and things about when we should do things at certain times. And they're external voices. They're kind of passed down narratives and timelines. And I know growing up, the blueprint for me was like college and corporate job. There really was nothing else sort of fostered or nurtured.
Yeah. I had a very similar thing that was kind of bestowed upon me. I wouldn't necessarily say modeled, because I did, my parents had me very young, got married very young, kind of settled down very young. And so for them, like that is kind of all they have known. And so for me, it was very much encouraged, go to college, get a good job, but then do that same thing. Like we maybe didn't do those steps in between, but you should do those steps in between. And then, that's just what life is.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought. That's what I thought as well. When I was in college, I thought, okay, I'm going to finish school. I'm going to get this corporate job. I'm just going to stay in this corporate job until I retire. And that's it. That's why does everybody say that being an adult's hard? I've got it all figured out. What do you mean?
God, it's so hard. I hate being an adult.
Yeah. Come to find out, there's a lot more to it than that, which I've learned. But I do think for a lot of us that was modeled to us because for previous generations, they also didn't have the options that we have.
Absolutely,
where entrepreneurship and being a nomad and travel and all of these things are so much more accessible to us now than they were for previous generations. And so a lot of that was modeled for us because previously that was kind of all people could do.
Absolutely.
And so I think it is harder for our generations now to be some of the first to have all of these options, which is ultimately a really beautiful thing, but also a really overwhelming thing.
Oh my gosh, I feel the same. It's like this double-edged sword where it's like, and as you are as well, like as an ambitious and goal-driven person, it's like I want to do all of the things. And so it can be beautiful and overwhelming to have all the options. Tell us a little bit about what it was like for you to be in that corporate world, kind of following the blueprint, thinking that was kind of it, to starting to realize it wasn't it.
I knew it wasn't it day one.
You did?
Day one as an intern, I was like, something about this does not feel right. And I don't know if I can do this forever, but I didn't know that there were options to do other things. And so for the first few years, I felt really stuck and really down because I just didn't know that there were other things available to me. And I thought that I was going to have to stay in that position or in something similar forever.
Oh, I know. I had the same. We were talking a little bit about this before we started recording. Like, I literally saw the office I used to work at, and I knew right away too. I mean, just to share a little like about me, I graduated college and moved to Europe for a year, and that was my like first far away off the path. And then I came right back and went into finance, and I felt it in my body. I would walk around the office floor, and it was all cubicles. I'm like, this can't be it. And I think for a lot of people, what's hard is to figure out what it is. So for you, how did you start to figure out, okay, we knew it's not it, but how did you sort of figure out what is it?
Yeah. I still don't think I figured out what is it. I think I've just followed my interests and curiosities, and I've figured out little things along the way, but I don't know if I've found it. I don't know if there is one.
I love that. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. I will say wellness was a really big gateway for me. And I got into wellness similarly when I started in corporate spaces. I really felt in my body like something is off. I was very fatigued. I was drained. I had no energy. I was getting a lot of brain fog. And I was like 20 and, didn't have any health issues. So I shouldn't have been feeling that way.
Right.
And so I was thinking, okay, maybe if I start exercising, maybe if I start drinking a little more water, because Lord knows I wasn't drinking much water at 20, or eating very well. I was like, maybe if I like eat a vegetable, just do these little things, maybe I can start to have a little bit more energy and I won't be wanting to fall asleep at my desk at work.
Yeah.
And that ended up just being this whole gateway to caring a lot about what I put in my body, to creating really solid fitness routines and that becoming my favorite part of my day, to becoming a personal trainer, to creating wellness content. And so it just kind of led me down this whole path.
Well, yeah. And I love that because it's kind of getting intuitive of like, what do I need? What do I need to start feeling better? And then finding that thing that then opens up all these other opportunities, ideas, feelings, paths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the courage to, okay, we talked about this off camera too, and I want to bring this up, but what you've been saying in your podcast is like finding solutions, right? And what I see a lot in my work is stuckness. I mean, I've experienced it too. I think, again, if we're only focusing on the problem, it's like so in our face, we can't see anything else around us. And we get really, really stuck there. So if you could talk a little to how you start to find solutions, or how you hold the problem there, it's in the peripheral, but it sounds like you really look for solutions.
Yeah, I think I spent a lot of time waiting for some like magical fairy godmother to show up and to tell me exactly what career I should have and exactly where
wonderful?
I should live and get the job for me and wave a magical wand. And I reached by by the time I reached like my late 20s, I realized the fairy godmother wasn't coming. And the closest thing I could get to a fairy godmother was changing my actions. And I had a lot of career setbacks. I had a hard breakup. I had financial setbacks. But I realized like none of these things are life ending. They're all figure outable. The same way I got into some of this mess, I think I can figure out a way to get out.
I love that mindset.
Okay, if it means I need to take a higher paying job to pay off, this debt, then that's what I need to do. If it means that I need to like move in with a couple of roommates to save money, then that's what I need to do. And I just started focusing so much more on solutions than expecting other people to solve things for me.
Yeah. Are there moments that you might still, even having that mindset? I love that. I think that's amazing. I love just holding on to this idea. I've been trying to hold on to like, no matter what, it's going to be okay. I've been going through like a terrible secondary infertility journey. And that's like, I keep holding on to like, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. And for me, I feel like it inserts this idea that there is still a choice, that I still kind of have some control of what life looks like. And I think that's, for me, has been really important to hold on to. Are there moments, and we're all human, that you still might feel like, ugh, like I don't have this yet, or I wish I was here, or, again, human to get caught in comparison or feeling, like we said before, behind.
Oh yeah, like every day. And I think those moments come every day for everybody, but it's like, do you experience the moment and let it pass, or do you stay in it? And I think I've learned how to be in it for a second, but to not let that hinder forward motion.
Yeah. Again, the choice. I think it's important to feel it too, right? And again, holding space for all of the things, all the emotions, and what is it telling us? I always like to say, like, what is that? If that is coming up, like, what is that telling us? Like, what is it cueing to us? Maybe what do we need to do? What kind of solution? So I think it's important to feel those. And the other thing I tell clients too is like, don't get stuck in the secondary emotion of, don't judge yourself. Don't feel guilty for feeling it. Like, just acknowledge that you're feeling it, own it, and try to understand it. Get curious about it.
Yeah. And I do think that there's also a lot of room to ask for help, because I do think what I said earlier, I don't want it to come off as overly individualistic or like everybody does everything on their own, because I actually feel the opposite. But I do also think that part of being solution oriented is when you need help, understanding what kind of help you need and going to the right source for it. Because I think sometimes where we get stuck and not asking for help or not getting help is not understanding the help we need and expecting people to read our minds. And so also knowing, what it is you need and the best source to get it from is also important in being solution oriented.
Would you say you were always someone that could ask for help?
No.
Yeah.
And that's something I still struggle with for sure. And I'm working on.
I don't know. I think the root for me of that is just sort of my family system, and I had a great upbringing and all of that. But it's sort of the way the family system works out was I was sort of kind of figuring it out on my own. I was kind of like not causing any trouble, all of the things, and it really created in me this very individualistic person, and so. I've really learned in the last year and a half, especially with this fertility journey, to seek the support. And I really have been proud of myself for that. It's not, I chose a job to help other people, like seriously. So I'm so glad that you bring that up. And I think what's so important about like these platforms, your platform, why I wanted to start this is like so many people are feeling a lot of the same things. Do you find that?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's like nothing new under the sun. We're all experiencing the same stuff. And so many people think that they're the only ones going through something. And it's actually very rarely that that's the case.
Yeah. I mean, before I started this podcast, I was just hearing all these narratives in my work as a therapist. Personally, I was going through it and friends were going through it. And I'm like, hold up, we're all feeling the same way and feeling this pressure of these timelines and pending timelines. And I have to do this thing by this time. And it just created so much anxiety in people. I'm like, but it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you stay grounded in trust in your timeline, staying focused on your own journey and your own process?
It's hard. It's something that I think I still wrap my mind around, especially last year I turned 35. And for women, 35 is like marketed as this big, scary age that we should all be afraid of.
Literally just had, I had my makeup done, obviously, because we were talking about I can't do my own makeup before this. And my makeup artist was, she was so funny and like fiery, 27. And she was like, I have to freeze my eggs now. It's the cliff is coming. I'm like, it's not the cliff.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of the other narratives that like we have to dismantle.
Yeah, exactly. I think a little bit of propaganda to try to get us to rush into decisions without really thinking critically about them. It's just my personal opinion.
I'm with you on that.
I'm not a doctor, and obviously biologically, yes, there are many factors to consider. But I do think that we put a lot of pressure on women solely and women's age solely when there's actually so many other factors that go into so many other things that we experience. But I spent most of last year freaking out about it. Mainly just because it felt like such a serious age and I feel like a very unserious person. Motherhood is not something that I feel super strongly about, and I still feel on the fence about it, but it's never something that I've had a super strong desire to do or experience. And I might change my mind, I might not. And that was kind of a big aha moment for me of like, why are you stressing out over this thing that's going to happen at this age that you don't really want?
Well, that's what's so problematic, I feel, about these narratives and these shoulds and these expectations is like they're so thrown at us constantly that we're not even really stopping to be like, wait, do I even want that thing?
Right.
Or if we're thinking we want it, understanding, well, why do I want that? Do I want that because I was told I want that? And I love that you shared sort of your perspective on motherhood because a lot of women feel like that. And then we're told to feel a certain way by not feeling like, you know, I want to be this huge desire to be a mom. I had so many clients really struggle with their indifference or indecision. I'm like, that's totally okay. So I love that you share that.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm allowing there to be just some grace in the indifference.
That's my word of the year, by the way. Grace.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's one that we all need more of.
I know. I added a second word today, which is hope. I need that.
Yes,
I need that desperately.
Another one that we definitely need right now. And then when I turned 35, I was like, oh, this is fine. I don't know what I was so freaked out about. I don't know if I thought I was just going to like wake up one morning and shrivel. I don't know.
That's
but
what they make you feel like, though. Like that 35 is, I know. And I hope you don't mind me sharing. I have wanted to have you on here for so long. And I reconnected in March of last year. And you did say like, you're still processing because I shared kind of what I would want to talk about. And you're like, which I love that honesty, that you were still processing. So I'm curious, and you mentioned some things. How did you start to make peace or just mindset shift to last year? I was feeling this way.
Yeah.
And now you really feel, even from listening to some of your episodes and sitting with you here today, I feel like you feel really grounded and grateful for the present moment.
Thank you. I think in the past year, I've gone through a lot of transition. So that time last year was like very rough for me.
You're like, I can't come.
It was super rough because I had been about 3 months into doing my content and my business full time. And that first 3 months was like not going well.
So share that because you made a big leap.
I did. At the end of 2023, I moved to New York and quit my job at the same time.
Oh my God. I didn't know that you did both those things at the same time.
Yeah. Maybe a little hectic.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, so that first 3 months was like really hard. It was like I was experiencing so much rejection. I was making like no money. I didn't know what was going to happen the following month, if I was going to have to get a job, what was going on. And so I was just like, okay, I got to figure something else out. And thankfully things have, I found my groove with being full-time and running my business and feel a lot more secure now. But I think there was just so much instability where it was like, I quit my job because things were going really well. And then the second I quit, things weren't really going well. And then I was in this new city and then 35 was like looming and I was feeling anxious.
Oh my God, all at once.
Yeah. But that was also when I went back to therapy too, because all of that was going on. And I was like, okay.
Tell me how you feel about
speaking
therapy.
Of asking for help, like I'm not figuring this out on my own. It's been good. I had been to therapy before. Mm-hmm. But previously, I had only done talk therapy, which can be great, super helpful. I feel like I had gotten to a point where it was like, okay, I know these things. I know how to talk about it. I know how to talk about my feelings. I'm not shoving things down. but talking about it isn't helping me process it. And so I did end up finding a therapist here in New York and starting to do EMDR therapy, which has been really, really helpful just for helping me reprocess some things. And it's been such a game changer.
I love that. And that goes right back to what you said earlier about finding the type of help that you need and just also having that awareness of like, this is great, but doesn't work for me. And I think that's so important to know what it is that you need just in everything we're talking about today. Like, what do I want? What do I need? And getting really clear on that based on like yourself and your values, not what everyone is telling you to do or what everyone else around you is telling you to do.
Yeah.
I'd be curious how you made the leap to leave and go full-time with your own business. I know for so many women that I've worked with, that is the desire and that is the dream. What you're doing is the dream, but there is, and this is something I wanted to speak on today too, so much fear and so much uncertainty that becomes really overwhelming that someone doesn't actually make that move. So I'd be curious, how you did it.
Yeah. It was a process and it took several years leading up to it for me to feel, I don't know if safe is the right word because I'm like, do I feel safe now? I don't know.
Well, I want to talk about safety. We'll get there.
Yeah. But it was a process. It was, I ended up leaving my job in 2023, but it was really 2021 that I got really serious about what I was doing. And so that was when I kind of restructured my business, started working with an accountant to get all the finances in order, started paying myself, and just started establishing like a rhythm with the financial side. That was when I started monetizing my podcast. And that was when things—
I'll have to ask you how to do that.
Yeah, I know, because podcasting is expensive.
Yeah.
People think you just show up and talk and it's not that.
So much work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so 2021, that's what I was really focusing on, was like figuring out the business side of things. And then in 2022, I was focusing a lot on my personal finances. So I paid my student loans off. I was reading a lot of finance books. I was doing, thank you, and just a lot of things to help just minimize friction and minimize things that I was going to be worried about. Like, when I thought about going full time, I was like, what are all the things that I'm worried about? I'm worried about not being able to pay my debt. I'm worried about not being able to save for retirement. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. And then I started looking for solutions to that, which kind of to continue harping on the same drum. But that was a big part of it.
But that's what's worked. That's what has worked for you.
Yeah. And then by 2023, podcast monetization had become a bit more stable, but then I also had some changes in like production and network and things like that by, early 2024 was why I had a little bit of a gap for the first couple of months. But I started getting good opportunities by the end of 2023, and I was still working my corporate job, and it just became abundantly clear that I couldn't do both.
Yes.
I had gone as far as I could, being able to do both. And I got tired of needing to ask for permission to say yes to opportunities that I wanted to say yes to.
I know.
And that was really the deciding factor in going full time. And so I said, okay, I'm going to give myself this year. I'm going to give myself 2024 and see how it works out.
And how has it worked out?
I'm still here. Thankfully, I haven't had to get a corporate job. I'm still doing all right, thankfully. But it was a long road.
Yeah. It is. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And like you said earlier, like the realization to the change or the realization to the destination, it takes time. And there's a lot of detours and there's a lot of like setbacks. I personally believe you learn a lot from those things. And I know you mentioned this too, one of the episodes of yours, that there's no wrong decision. I think indecision is the only wrong decision, because even if it doesn't lead you directly to where you want to go, you're going to learn something from it.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you can figure out another course of action, but just making a step in any direction, you can always course correct and fix. And I think it's Marie Forleo who says everything is figure outable.
I love that.
You can always pivot, but you have to start somewhere.
You have to start. I also found too, I love what you did, almost how to set yourself up, right? You kind of knew the direction and the goal, the next goal, right? Because there never is it. There's more opportunities, things coming. But sort of, I did something very similar. It's like I did all my clinical training at outpatient, and then I slowly started to like set myself up to leave more of that structure, and I want to talk about safety because we're taught like safety and security looks a certain way. But I think that's important. Like there can be these little steps. I call them like calculated risk. Maybe you don't want to jump off the cliff without the parachute, but like let's start to put the parachute together. And I find it becomes less overwhelming and less uncertain.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned safety. Safety and fear was something I want to talk about with you today too. And maybe talking about how you saw safety or what was safety for you maybe in your 20s versus what's safety now or what brings you safety.
Yeah. That's a good question. I would say that they feel very different. I mean, safety in my 20s, I think, was like clinging to whatever job I had at that time, even the corporate ones that I really hated. That to me was the definition of safety.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel like I'm trying to redefine safety and I haven't fully figured out what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, safety and like the lack of safety that I feel has been a really big theme in my therapy sessions with my therapist lately because I'm just figuring out.
Are you surprised that's a question that I have as a therapist?
Right. I'm just figuring out like, what does that mean for me now? Or where I hit certain milestones where I always thought, oh, if I make a certain amount of money or if I have a certain number of listeners or if I have this or if I have that, I'll feel safe. And then I reach a point where I do have those things, but I still don't feel safe. Then that definition clearly wasn't hitting the mark. So that's more so where I am right now, where it's like I have a lot of the things that I thought I needed to feel safe, but still don't. So I'm having to figure out, okay, what's happening underneath that is.
What is truly the thing that is going to make you feel safe. Yeah, I think what I've seen, I know what I've seen a lot is, defining safety in things like 9 to 5, steady paycheck, partnership, like again, this like blueprint that we're sold. And then, a lot of people end up getting those things and they don't necessarily feel unsafe, but they feel unfulfilled. And a lot of the work I do with my clients is like, let's define what that looks like. For me now, safety, some of what's safe is freedom of choice, freedom of my own time, financial freedom, just more maybe I have to work on the control stuff, but like, that is what feels safe. Like if I were to think about someone telling me I had to be somewhere at 8 a.m. on a Monday, like to work for, I have a reaction in my body to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important as we're like, I'm trying to like dismantle these narratives and timelines is redefining things like safety. Another concept I help people redefine is success.
Mm-hmm.
How do you define, or maybe it's a working definition too, I think ways in which we look at accomplishments or success are these like quote unquote milestones that are career, partnership, parenthood.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think my biggest definition of success for so long was just having ownership over my time and time flexibility. That for the longest time was my dream. And so I'm so grateful to have that now. And that to me does feel like success, is having the autonomy to create my own schedule and not having to answer to anybody. That's also not a good fit for everybody. I do think you have to be a certain kind of person to thrive with that.
Totally.
But I learned pretty early on that I was. And so to now have that is great. And that's always like my foundational definition of success. I don't know if I necessarily view some of the other things like, partnership or parenthood as markers of success, only because I don't think that not having those things is unsuccessful. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think it just turns into like a really slippery slope, having these kind of binary definitions. I think that those things can be really beautiful parts of life, but aren't in my definition of success.
No, yeah. I know. And I think we, again, need to be redefining or being more expansive, and that can be someone's definition of success, but it doesn't have to be everybody's. And I think it's so important that people find their own definitions for these things. And those are the things that they live by. Those are the things that they make choices by. What is safety for you? It's going to be very different than somebody else. Or what is success for you versus somebody else? And what's so problematic is we're like, and I think it's getting better. I do. Like we were saying, generations before us didn't have as many options or maybe models of like going off this path. But I think it's so problematic when we're selling like one blueprint to every single person.
Yeah. Yeah. I was even thinking about the Martha Stewart documentary that just
oh my gosh,
which I love. I've loved Martha Stewart my whole life.
I loved her documentary.
She was
Talk about
very
like
real.
starting over and
many times. But one of the things that really stuck out to me was when the part kind of earlier in the documentary where she was talking about the birth of her daughter of like, well, I just had my daughter because that's just what you were supposed to do. That was just expected.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's just way too big of a thing to do just because it's expected. And I think in previous generations definitely was more common.
Oh my gosh. I was literally having this conversation with somebody, I think that over this weekend. And I remember, and I definitely wanted to be a mother. I was kind of like, not that I was unsure, but the path wasn't like unfolding for me in that way. I didn't meet my partner till 34, which of course now I know all the timing makes sense, but everybody else around me had already started having kids and buying houses and all of the thing. So I sort of just reconciled, okay, like maybe this is not my path. And if it's not, then I'll be happy. And then I met my partner at 34 and we were just kind of enjoying our relationship. And so I was still kind of like, and it probably wasn't until 36, 37 was like, I want children with this person. And, 37, I froze my eggs, had my son at 40 naturally. But yeah, I think sort of just allowing time to unfold and let yourself figure those things out. But I remember after having my son, he was a newborn, it's hard. And I was like, man, you really have to want this to do it. I clearly remember, and I was having that conversation with, maybe it was someone sharing with me that they were kind of like on the fence or they knew. And I'm like, you really do. I personally think you really do have to want it because it's beautiful, but it's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me your thoughts on this too. I think what I see happening is we romanticize and idealize these milestones as if they're like, everything's great about it. And I maybe you mentioned this in another podcast that sometimes when we get there it can be underwhelming.
Yeah.
And the partner is not the solve all. The child is not the solve all. It's not like as if we arrive at these things and we're instantly happy or everything's great. I think they're beautiful. There's also an invitation to another side of those things where, in my partnership, I'm now compromising. My schedule is different. My time is different. And I think sometimes we over idealize and romanticize these things.
I absolutely think we sometimes romanticize those things, or we look forward to some of the events surrounding them. We look forward to, and I'm going to be honest, I think we look forward to some of the attention that we get leading up to those things.
Yeah.
As women, I mean, probably the most positive reinforcement a woman is ever going to get is like events leading up to her wedding and getting married. And I've talked to friends about this from like a social media standpoint of knowing like you will never get as high of engagement on anything as you will with like an engagement announcement or maybe like that first baby announcement.
Yeah.
You will never experience as much positivity, support, kindness, whatever as you will in those snapshots of a moment. And so, we put so much into it because that's the main time that we are celebrated for something.
I just watched this documentary. I've been telling everybody about it. It's essentially kind of what you just said, like use it like these milestone things to gain attention, followers, whatever.
Yeah.
It's called An Update on Our Family. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What is it on? I don't even remember what it's on, but it's basically like family vlogging on YouTube, and they showcase and highlight their whole adoption journey. And it's like what like made them money.
Wow.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
It's really like very, very sad. But yeah, you're right. It kind of draws a lot of attention.
Yeah, it does. And that's why I'm like, I don't blame people for seeking that out. I think it's more so an invitation to figure out, okay, what other ways can we also celebrate ourselves in addition to those things so that there's not so much pressure on this is supposed to be the happiest moment of your life, but you still have a whole lot of life to live after that. So does that mean you don't have any more happy moments? Like,
that's it. We get here and it's done.
Yeah. I also feel that way about our 20s. People put so much pressure on their 20s of like, these are the best years of your life, the best decade of your life. Okay. And then it ends and you have ideally a lot more decades after that. So then what?
I like to operate under the idea, and I feel like I'm living this, that it just gets better.
Yeah.
It just gets better. And you just get wiser, you get more clear on who you are, you get more connected to what you value. I really do feel like I was like a mess in all the best ways in my 20s. I had no idea what I was wanting to do. I was like, going out, partying and broke and all of the things. And I love that. Like I learned so much from that. But yeah, I think it just gets better. There's just more to come.
Yeah, as it should. It shouldn't. What do you mean we have one good decade and then then what? It just doesn't even make sense.
I have this vision of me being like the best, like 60-year-old, like I just feel like that's going to be not that I want to wait for that, but I don't know. I do feel like it's just going to get even better.
Yeah. I think that there can be so much to look forward to if we don't put so much pressure on these really narrow views of our lives.
What do you think about the word waiting? I have so like being in the waiting or waiting for these things to come, or even for me, I'm still working on living in the moments while I'm waiting for the thing. And I'm definitely guilty of, I have a very strong desire for this second baby, and I can get so hyper focused on that. Like I'm just waiting for that. And then I can live or I can be happy. And I've really been, and it's hard, like it's a struggle, but I've seen also a lot of my clients be in this place of waiting and I won't be happy until, or I've also seen clients, I'm going to wait to do the trip until I meet the person, or I'm going to wait to buy the house until I meet the person. And even if they do those things, then there's still some like sadness and disappointment of like, which is so sad because it's like, man, this is such a huge accomplishment. That like I had a client buy a house and she had those same feelings of like, I thought I'd be doing this with somebody. I was like, yeah, but let's not lose sight of like, you're doing it. And how awesome are you doing it, that you're doing it on your own and you figured out like the mortgage and all these things. I was like, that's such a huge, huge thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that seasons of waiting can be really challenging. When I think about seasons where I feel like I was waiting, I almost start to reframe them as like seasons of preparation instead of seeing it solely as waiting. Like, yes, I might be waiting for a certain event or waiting to receive something, but also that time is ideally preparing me for the thing as opposed to like being idle.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's such an incredible shift. Okay, I'm preparing. I have been leaning into faith a little bit more through this journey. And one thing that really I'm holding on to and is resonating with me kind of related to waiting is you're not waiting on God. God is waiting on you. God is waiting on you to be this version, to receive the blessing. And that really resonated. And it kind of, when you said sort of shifting to preparation, like really reminded me of that. And I, to offer to everybody out there, if you can make those shifts, sort of for me, it alleviates a lot of the pressure, the sadness, the grief, really.
Because a lot of these things are out of our control. We can't necessarily control, when we conceive or when we meet a partner or when we and a partner are financially ready to do something. Like there's so much of that is out of our hands that we put, I think, like in disproportionate amount of pressure on ourselves when we give ourselves the whole pie of pressure when really what we're able to control is just a slice. And it's hard.
Have you found, I found this in my journey too, that the second you take the pressure off is when things happen.
Yep. I've had that happen so many times.
So many times. Me too. I'm like, damn it, why can't I do that now? Yep. I guess I say that to say like it's not easy. Like I think the pressure can exist, but maybe to your point is like, don't make it the whole pie.
Yeah. It's like there's so many factors for all of these things. And yet we make all of it our sole fault or put so much guilt on ourselves for something that isn't solely, on us.
Yeah. I think maybe as part of the journey too is trusting like these things will come. If they're meant for you, they will come and you don't have them yet. And I know, I had a great time in my 30s and being single, but I was also kind of like clouded with a lot of sadness. And I do have regrets of not living more in joy and enjoying those seasons and enjoying being single because I'm not getting those, hopefully I'm never getting those back, I hope. And part of this podcast is like safeguarding women from like missing out on these really beautiful phases of life because we're like waiting for the thing, or we're not arrived yet at where we want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that I think about a lot as like a single woman in my 30s, and something that has helped me, at least in my journey, and particularly moving to different cities, is I also think about, okay, well, if I would have met that partner and settled down when I lived in Seattle, I never would have ended up in LA for that number of years that I needed, that were so pivotal to my growth. If I would have met a partner and settled down in LA, I'd never be in New York now, which I've needed this time here and has been pivotal for my growth. And so whatever version of a partner I meet, during this season or after this season is actually going to be such a better fit for me than whoever I would have met 10 years ago, that it's worth it to me to, have these things happen when they're happening.
Yeah. And thinking about what is the purpose of each season, like you're saying. And, we were saying this off camera too, that no time is wasted. Like what, and I try to think about, how is this happening for me, or what is the purpose of this timing, and really leaning into that and getting everything out of the season that you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And just enjoying life as much as possible.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Which sometimes is harder to do than it should be.
It is. I always like say that with the caveat of like, it is not easy, but it is possible.
Yes.
It really is possible. There's a couple other things I said I was going to use my note cards and I didn't at all, but it's fine. A couple other things I want to talk about that's come up on this podcast, and I'm curious kind of how you navigate these things. And one is friendship. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's been my experience in my 30s as someone who didn't meet these milestones, is that I found myself in situations where I was now the only single friend. I couldn't really relate to these people I love very deeply, and conversations would be really centered around, marriages or children. And like, I just couldn't relate. And I see that a lot with women where we do have different timelines and we do have different journeys and sort of friendships going down different paths. And I'm curious for you what friendship has looked like. Also moving cities.
Yeah, moving across the country a couple times. I would say it's been a mix. I do think I have been really fortunate that I have friends who are kind of in all different seasons. So I have some friends who are like married, partnered, have kids, older kids, some friends who are just starting their families, some who are engaged, some who are single. Like I really have kind of a mix of my friends are kind of all over the map, which I think is like very representative of our generation. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also I think living in bigger cities too, you have people who do things on all different timelines. I've spent a lot of my adult years in New York and LA, where people do tend to do things a little bit later. And it is kind of normal to be single in your 30s. And I've never been in a situation where I've necessarily been the only person. So I'm really grateful for that, to have always had people that I can relate to. I am also grateful that of the friends that I have who have kind of moved into that stage of their lives, none of them have like made it their whole personality. And so when I hang out with them or when I talk to them, I still feel like I'm talking to them. And yes, they have absolutely, especially becoming mothers, like that does change you. And I would never ask for them to be, the same version that we were in high school, because nobody is. But at the end of the day, I still feel like they're them. And now they have these little people that I get to be an auntie to, and that's great. And we still have a friendship that exists outside of that. And so I feel really grateful to have friends who kind of already act that way. And I think that that's just kind of a shared values that we have. And then I also have plenty of friends who are also single, who, we can relate and are in very similar places. So I think I've gotten really, really lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really fortunate, because I've seen women, myself included, like, again, like I said, like not being able to relate. And I think what I have said to people and what I think is, decent advice is kind of like put yourself out there and make some new friends and find friends that are in your life stage, find friends that you relate to. Mm-hmm. But friendship can be, it can be, you got very lucky, but it can be like tricky to navigate.
Yeah.
Okay, I have two other things I said it was only two. One is you did a segment on 35 things you learned by 35. Yeah. And one of the things you said is you don't need a boyfriend. And I saw on your Instagram stories, if this is right, you did no dating. 0 dates in 2024?
Yeah, which wasn't on purpose.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. So for that caveat, because people think that I'm telling everybody like not to date, not at all. It was advice that I would have given myself in my early 20s. The piece of advice was you don't need a boyfriend, you need hobbies. Because when I was in my early 20s, I was entering relationships solely because I was bored. Not because I desired the companionship, not because I was particularly interested in the people I was dating. It was purely because I was bored. And I probably would have benefited a lot more from like spending time with myself, engaging in hobbies, exploring my interests than spending, several years here and there in these relationships that like I didn't necessarily need to be in.
Yeah.
So that's the caveat. I'm not telling anybody to not, not pursue the things they want to pursue, but to question why you're doing it. And if you are doing it, do it with people who you really want to be in relationship with.
Yeah. I think time is while time can feel like this pressure, it is so valuable. And I think also as we get older, I want deeper connection. I want meaningful connection. Like I don't, also as a mom, like time is limited. So if I'm going to spend my time, like I want to enjoy it. I want to like really value it. So I love sort of that intentionality of if you're going to date with intention.
Date people you like.
Yeah.
And that was kind of why I didn't date much last year. I did have a year of just like not dating. And it honestly wasn't intentional. It was just like my first year in New York, I was busy working, trying to, not have to get a corporate job. I was making friends. I was going to lots of events. I just like was not interested in spending time on dating apps. And that's where a lot of dating happens. And I just didn't do it. And then the end of the year came and I was like, oh, I've had a prolonged inactivity of this area of my life. But actually outside of Q1, it ended up being like a really beautiful year.
Yeah. You look like you have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question, and then also if there's something you want to kind of leave the audience with is, how do you stay connected to what you really want, and stay clear on that when there can be so much noise around us of telling us like what we should do, what we should want? How do you stay connected and clear on like, I'm doing this because I want this, or this doesn't feel good anymore, I'm going to pivot?
I think it's come from a sense of curiosity, having curiosity with myself. If I have feelings come up, if I feel indifferent towards something, if I feel jealous of something that I see someone else have, if I feel excited about something, if I'm avoiding something, like asking myself questions to figure out what is at the root of that has been really helpful for me figuring out what it is I truly do and don't want. And it also changes all the time. And also give yourself space to change your mind. We can change our mind about anything.
We're allowed to change our minds. I know I've had some clients like get to their like ideal dream job and they're like, I don't even like this. I'm like, all right, we'll do. But there's this guilt attached. So I love that advice that like, if it's not working or you don't like it anymore, change.
Yeah.
Pivot.
Why not? Everything's made up. All of this is made up.
It's not real.
Everything is fake. Get a new job if you want one. Move to a new city, try it out. Like, why not?
I know. I feel like, living kind of life fearful and again, not easy, but is limiting. There's so much beyond that if you can kind of build up that confidence and courage to go for those things.
Yeah.
Okay, you've said so many amazing things today. So much great advice. Any last parting words for our audience?
I think it's just important to remember that like we are not timelines, and that feeling good in your own skin and in your life is so much more important than things happening when you think they should happen.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed having you in this conversation.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Hi, everyone. It's Beth, your favorite therapist, or at least I hope I am, and host of Quiet the Clock. I am so excited to share the secret of my glowing skin with all of you. Lumine Face Pro. This amazing device has completely transformed my skin, and I've noticed a real difference in tone and texture in such a short amount of time. Lumine Face Pro uses advanced microcurrent technology to gently stimulate your facial muscles, promoting collagen production and improving skin elasticity. I mean, amazing. The device is also equipped with LED light therapy, which helps reduce wrinkles and fine lines and promotes cell regeneration. Hello, so perfect for this 43-year-old mama. I need every ounce of this. With regular use, Blue Mean Face Pro can help you achieve a smoother, brighter, and more even skin tone. It's so easy to use and safe on any skin type. Invest in your skin and experience the difference with Blue Mean Face Pro. Visit bluemean.com today to learn more and order yours. Use the code QTC at checkout to get $30 off your first order. I mean, what a deal. $30 off your first order. I hope you guys run to bluemean.com and get yours and love it as much as I do. Hey guys, I'm Beth. Thank you so much for tuning in to Quiet the Clock. If you want to hear more episodes and learn more about how to dismantle societal timelines, live life on your own terms, live life fully and authentically, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Quiet the Clock Pod. You guys, I'm really excited. We just created all this amazing merch. And so if you're loving the podcast and you want to support our cause and continue to hear amazing episodes, please support us by buying some merch. I am living in these sweatshirts every day. We have a range of colors. We have hoodies, we have mugs, we have hats, we have journals. We have all of the things, and I love having them on because it's just a reminder to quiet the clock, to slow down, to let life unfold and be happy. So there's meaning and purpose behind wearing it too, which is a nice reminder. So check out our website, quiettheclock.com, to get your merch.